After we announced my pregnancy, my sister-in-law's behavior changed. My sister-in-law's plan to humiliate me at my husband's party didn't work out, and ended up getting her sent to prison for 7 years. I've been married to Harry for the last 9 years, except for his relationship with his sister Kayla, who's always bringing negativity into our lives. I enjoy everything about our marriage now, don't get me wrong. When I first met Kayla, I loved her, but over time, I quickly changed my opinion of her. She's poisonous and manipulative. Law's plan to humiliate me at my husband's party didn't work out, and ended up with her going to prison for 7 years. I've been married to Harry for 29 years, except for his relationship with his sister Kayla, who's always bringing negativity into our lives. I enjoy everything about our marriage now, don't get me wrong. When I first met Kayla, I loved her, but over time, I quickly changed my opinion. She's a real negative person, manipulative and parents about how she wanted him to wed someone she felt comfortable with, but his parents hardly really listened to her throughout their great battle. While my husband and I were meeting and falling in love, his parents were quite encouraging, but still always treated me coldly. She would always bring up Harry's exes for no apparent reason whenever I was present, reminding him of how well they were doing and suggesting she'd say he should get in touch with them. This went on for ages. Harry thought this was weird and asked her to stop talking about his exes. I wasn't the only one who saw this, and I'd get annoyed and start laughing, saying I was jealous and that Harry shouldn't be with someone like me. Sil would always invite one of Harry's exes when his parents called us for dinner, saying she'd had. She doesn't follow me, but she checks my Instagram constantly as well, since I have a public account. I noticed that she's usually the first person to see my stories. Should a man comment on my photograph, she would then go to her brother and grumble over how I was sharing indecent images of myself. Harry and I would actually chuckle at her claims. She convinced Harry to split up with me when he and I agreed to live together, telling him I had many flaws as a woman and that he could find someone better since I'd only been friendly to her. This comment really hurt me. Sadly, S's treatment of me got even worse as soon as Harry and I got engaged. Everyone started applauding Harry and me as we revealed our engagement, but I noticed. Kayla was a bit quiet, then she jumped out of her seat and left. Later, she called Harry, sobbing and yelling about how she didn't want to hear the news with everyone else, because she felt she was closest to him and deserved to be the first to know. Later on, she messaged me, almost like she was threatening me, telling me how to treat her brother. She had always been the only woman in his life. I was pretty shocked by the strange message and didn't respond. She didn't reply to any of my messages and even avoided me. She was still involved in all the wedding preparations for some reason, like when I went dress shopping and had my bridal shower. In-law and fiancé called her out on it several times. Her criticism of the wedding reached a whole new level as she freely expressed her unhappiness with my decisions. Her actions persisted. One day, Kayla overheard me talking about the centerpiece with my future mother-in-law. Kayla started ribbing me about the centerpiece as soon as she heard me mention it. She said my decision was totally classless and that's why she wanted her brother to marry someone better for me. That was the last straw. I made it clear to her that she wasn't invited to our wedding anymore and told her I couldn't take her constant teasing and criticism anymore. She was shocked and gasped, like she never expected me to challenge her. Kayla was infuriated, even by my mother-in-law. Law, who had my back, later on. Kayla got in touch with Harry, moaning about how I embarrassed her and insisting that he should control me, since I would be his wife. Harry insisted strongly that he supported my choice and that she would not be invited to the wedding unless she was a no-show. She grudgingly texted me a sincere apology. I saw it and once more left on read. I was already tired from getting ready for my wedding and I wanted nothing to do with her drama. She did visit our wedding in the end, since I wanted her to not criticize us afterwards. The guests seemed to have no problem following the pink and pastel colors I'd chosen for my wedding, but S arrived looking like she was at a funeral. She was wearing a black floor-length gown with a veil. We were stunned. SLE visited everyone, sharing her sadness about her brother's death. My husband spoke to SLE about her discomfort with her wedding attire at the reception, saying that she had the right to wear whatever she chose and that I was too controlling. She tried to play the victim, but my mother-in-law and father-in-law kept on and on about the scene. My mother-in-law and father-in-law eventually made her leave. It was embarrassing for me ever since that day. I avoid her and I told her not to go anywhere near our kids. When I gave birth to my son, Nate, she tried to object, but my husband's parents had my back. They supported my choice and knew exactly why I wanted to keep my baby far from my infant. She then had a miscarriage with her then boyfriend, Jamie, 2 years ago, and it totally shattered her. It was indeed a depressing period for everyone, given we already had a child, and Harry and I felt bad for her. We decided to be a bit more lenient after her miscarriage. She could bond with our son, so we welcomed her to our house. Despite how she acted towards me, she has been really nice to our son. It was surprising how she changed at first, but over time, she went back to her usual self. She always talks about how difficult her life is and how things never seem to go her way, and she blames her ex. We felt bad for her because she was already planning to have a baby, so we decided to be a bit more relaxed about it. She could get on with our kid Nate, so we invited her to stay with us, even though she'd been a bit difficult with me. She's been really nice to our son, which was a bit of a shock. At first, she seemed to have changed, but after a while, she went back to being the same person she always was. She's always moaning about how hard her life is and how things never seem to go right for her, and she blames her ex and her friends or managers for it. I've noticed that she's never wrong. She's always trying to get people on her side by acting like she's victimized, and she hardly ever admits when she's in the wrong. She chose to get married this year and invited everyone to save us, even though it seemed like our relationship was getting better. Harry was surprised when he found out that we weren't invited. She started explaining that she won't let me come because I'd cause a fuss. I've noticed that she never seems to be wrong. She always tries to get people on her side by playing the victim card and hardly acknowledges any flaws. She chose to get married this year and invited everyone to save us, given that our relationship seemed to have improved. Harry was surprised to learn that we weren't invited. She began to explain how she won't let me come, since I would cause a disturbance at her wedding. When we questioned her about it, having never done anything to her, I phoned and asked her why she would think something like that. Kay began to tell me how she had deliberately dressed in all black for our wedding, so now she was worried that I might do the same and that was why she wanted me off-site. I informed my spouse straightforwardly about how manipulative she was. Outraged about it. After discussing with his parents, Harry decided to let Sil know that they would. Neither would be attending the wedding, nor would they pay for it. This made her start crying and blame me for causing this disaster. Her husband told her she had no right to blame me, as she had freely admitted her own error. Kayla, however, explained her behavior by saying that I should just get over it, since our wedding was long ago. Later, she contacted me to apologize and ask for forgiveness, as Phil and Mill were still not paying for her wedding, though I hate to say. Kayla's a pretty charming and convincing person when she wants something. I wanted to just move on from the past and forgive her. Her wedding to Jemia went perfectly, we all showed up and had fun, not even 6 months later. Kayla turned up at our door, moaning about her marriage failing, for a few days. Harry and I let her stay with us, where she'd spend endless hours moaning about her husband. They were struggling to conceive and Kayla was obviously blaming Jamie for everything. When I went to talk to Kayla, she insisted it was all down to her husband. She'd get really focused on our lives and try to create things that didn't exist when she wasn't blaming her husband. For instance, usually every morning before heading to work, I visit the gym. When I'm running late, I sometimes grab my work clothes so I can finish my workout, have a bath and change into my business wear. I've seen this for a while and would have a lot of questions about. I've been doing this for a while, and I've got a few questions about it. Like, why am I bathing? Why do I even go to the gym? I didn't really think too much about it, and I just tell her how I like keeping my weight and how I don't like going to the office all sweaty. She'd nod and lick her lips. Mill was telling us about a friend of hers who was divorcing. Right at lunch she'd left her friend's husband and grabbed half of his assets after finding out about his adultery with her. Sil stopped her abruptly to ask my husband whether he and I had signed a. Before we got married, we stopped to stare at her. We stopped eating. She glanced at my husband, as if I hadn't even arrived. My husband told her straight up that he's not one to mince his words. We both made good money, so we didn't see the need for a prenup. She snorted and started saying that he could be blindsided any day and that cheats abound today. Her statements offended me, so I asked her to clarify exactly what she meant. Then she began. I pointed out that I was meeting someone, as I usually carried spare clothes with me. As Harry's sister, it was her job to warn her brother. These were shocking remarks for me. Phil and Mill arrived right away to stop her from making stuff up, and told her not to get involved in other people's business. Sil kept on saying she was just trying to be there for her brother, and started joking about whether our son Nate was Harry's son, since he didn't look like him. I swear I watched I've never seen my husband so angry. He looked at Kayla straight in the eye and said that she wasn't a mother yet, because she didn't deserve to be, and that her child would be better off in paradise than with someone like her. Kayla's lips. My husband was livid. He told Kayla that she wasn't a mother yet, that she didn't deserve to be one, and that her child would be better off in paradise than with someone like her. Kayla's lips hung open, and and Phil just watched silently as my husband left. Kayla kept complaining about her being a shameless person trying to ruin everything, saying that her life had nothing to offer and that she was just a loser. He told her that she did nothing all day while her husband worked non-stop. Stunned, and Phil watched as my husband left, with Kayla complaining about her being a shameless person trying to ruin everything. She said that her life was a waste and that she was a loser. He told her to stop blaming me and focus on her own marriage instead of pointing fingers at me and asking about prenups. Tears began to stream down Kayla's face as she turned to Jia, who was sitting next to her, but he never spoke. My husband never loses it like this. She eventually got up from her chair and dashed into the toilet. My husband was boiling over. He wiped his hand on his trouser leg and Mill arrived to cool him down. Just how annoying she could be, I nodded as he apologized for what his sister had said about our son having taken enough from Kayla over the years. I was somewhat relieved that my husband stood up for me so publicly. He apologized to Jamie, but totally ignored Kayla once he had cooled off. That day following lunch, we returned to no interaction with Kayla. Her actions were impacting my husband, as well as me. We simply barred her from everything, so she could get in touch with us. I nodded as he apologized for what his sister had said about our son having taken enough from Kayla over the years. I was somewhat relieved that my husband stood up for me so publicly. He apologized to Jamie, but totally ignored Kayla once he had cooled off. The day after lunch, we returned to not interacting with Kayla. Her actions were impacting my husband, as well as me. We simply barred her from everything so she could get in touch with us. After lunch, and Phil spoke with us and decided that Kayla had gone too far this time. They could see how their usually quiet son had gone wild after Kayla had persisted in pushing him. We last spoke with her a year ago, and everything had been running without problems. 2 months ago, I discovered what I was expecting, given our lack of effort. This was quite unexpected. Welcoming another family member makes my spouse and me feel blessed, so we decided to let everyone know on my husband's birthday. We were waiting for the right time to tell everyone, because we wanted to honor Harry, Mill and Phil, who were throwing a great party on their lawn. We invited our close friends and relatives, and Sil chose to show up after hearing about it from others. When we saw her, my husband and I were shocked. Harry told him how much she had missed him and how sorry she was for their last talk. My husband told his sister to apologize to me, because she had pointed. We were waiting for the right moment to do the right thing, so we decided to throw a party for Harry, Mill and Phil. Our close friends and relatives were invited. Sil chose to show her face after hearing about it from others. When we saw her, my husband and I were shocked. Harry told him how much she had missed him and how sorry she was for their last conversation. My husband told his sister to apologize to me because she had pointed fingers at my character. Ellie nodded, looked at me, then apologized. She told me how she had been seeing a therapist for the previous few months and how it was wrong for her to treat me like that. I disagreed with everything she said, but nodded as I wanted to be polite to her in front of everyone. This was a gathering for my husband. M and Fel checked in on us and told us that if we felt UNC comfortable, they would kick her out, as they had my character. SLE nodded and looked at me, then said sorry. She told me how she'd been seeing a therapist for the last few months and how it was wrong for her to treat me like that. I disagreed with everything she said, but I nodded to be polite in front of everyone, especially as this was a gathering for my husband. M and Fel checked in on us and said that if we felt UNC, they would kick her out, as they had. She didn't know she was arriving. Harry, however, insisted on not causing a scene, so we decided to leave it. It seemed strange, as I was laughing and socializing with everyone during the celebration. She mentioned visiting a therapist, so I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, even though she appeared overly optimistic, which was completely not her nature. Harry spoke movingly about how he thought he was the luckiest man on earth, appreciative of yet another year spent with her. When it was time to cut the cake, Harry made some really sweet remarks that made me blush. It was like being back when we first started dating all those years ago. I was really touched that my husband and I were still so in love. Then Harry and I decided to tell everyone some great news. We grinned and said we were having a baby, and everyone stopped for a second to think about it before going crazy. My mum rushed up to hug me and started crying as Phil saluted Harry and I was crying my eyes out. Everyone was dying to know if we'd picked names for the baby, and they were obviously thrilled for us. SLE was the one odd one out. She looked stunned, her mood changed, and she just turned away from us, seeming irritated. I figured maybe she was just processing things slowly, but I was a bit worried that she'd ruin another party for us. I got sidetracked and other people came over to chat. I got up to help. My laws carried lunch, but Rick and my parents begged me to stay seated, telling me I shouldn't even move. At that point, Sil came up to me, smiling, as I was calmly waiting for my husband to bring me a meal. Lively said she wanted to offer me dinner since she was so excited about my pregnancy, and handed me a dish, saying she wanted to make it up to me for all the times she had been nasty to me in the past. I nodded and said it was all right. She then turned to go, but I was just about to start digging when I found out she'd put shrimp on my dish. I know I'm allergic to shrimp, so I was surprised Sil even brought me this. I shook my head and got up to get my own lunch. At that point, Jimia came over to me to wish me well on my pregnancy. After a little conversation, he asked me why I hadn't been eating. Jimia reassured me not to worry and took the dish away. I nodded and said yes, and she left. I was about to start digging when I saw she'd put shrimp on my plate. I know I'm allergic to shrimp, so I was surprised Sil even brought me this. I shook my head and got up to get my own lunch. At that point, Jimia came over to me to wish me well on my pregnancy. After a little chat, he asked me why I hadn't been eating. Jimia told me not to worry and took the dish from my hands. I pointed out how Sil had given me the shrimp, probably by mistake, since he likes eating them. He said he could have this dish. I could buy a fresh plate for myself. I nodded, grinned, then turned away. Jimia started to puke and retch across the dish. 5 minutes later, not even 5 minutes later, everyone stopped eating and watched him stagger to get out of his seat. Concerned, Har and Kayla hurried towards him. Jimia gestured at his plate, then at his. After I pointed out how Sil had accidentally given me some shrimp, he said he could have this dish. I could buy a fresh plate for myself. I nodded, grinned, then turned away. Jimia started to puke and retch across the dish. 5 minutes later, not even 5 minutes later, everyone stopped eating and watched him stagger to get out of his seat. Concerned, Har and Kayla hurried towards him. Jimia gestured at his throat. Our eyes grew wide with amazement as we realized what he had eaten had definitely made something wrong with him. Jimia passed out, then everyone gasped in amazement and worry. Kayla hurried over to examine his dish, and her eyes grew shocked. She turned to stare at me and asked whether I had handed her husband my plate. I nodded. Someone called for an ambulance amid the tumult, and he was hurried to the hospital. Through all of this, Kayla was sobbing. Stop and was staring angrily at me. Jamie had been poisoned. We were told later on, knowing that the plate belonged originally to me. I nearly passed out upon hearing this. Jamie consumed may have poisoned my baby and me, not yet known to Harry, Mill, Fell, or my parents. Is this since nobody knew what was in the food he ate that made him faint like that? The police were called to get evidence from it. Jamie is still in hospital while I'm writing this. Kayla stayed with him overnight. Relatives are calling to find out what happened to Jamie and who might have poisoned him. My husband and I are on the phone to Fielding, trying to get to the bottom of it. They're staying with us since they're too scared to go back to their own house. We don't know what happened, everything was fine until suddenly something went wrong. Please tell everyone that the plate originally belonged to me, and that Kayla, my husband, and I are trying to figure out what happened. They're currently staying with us because they're too scared to go back to their own house. We don't know what happened, even though everything was going fine. I've told everyone that the plate originally belonged to me and that Kayla had given it to me. This whole situation has me really worried. If this turns into an investigation, I'll have to tell the police the truth. Most importantly, I'm worried about what my ex could do to me. I feel terrible about what happened. I don't want to be around her, and I can't. I don't want to bring my kids anywhere near her, because she obviously has no limits when it comes to trying to poison me. I feel bad about handing Jamie my meal and maybe contaminating my bill. Thanks for the thousands of comments on this post. I never would have guessed I could have. I'm not sure if everyone will believe me, but I do feel somewhat accountable for the event involving my Billy should have thrown the dish away. I'm not sure why I let him grab it from me. I keep crying about his future. I typed this earlier and had shaking hands. I haven't been able to sleep, though. I'm really grateful for all the answers I've received. I'm not sure why I let him grab it from me. Jamie and I have security, but my husband and I do have security, too. I'm not sure why I let him grab it from me. I'm not sure why I let him grab it from me. I'm not sure why I let him grab it from me. I've had a few answers, and I'm feeling a bit shaky. I haven't been able to sleep, though. I do feel a bit responsible for what happened with my bill. I should have just thrown the dish away. I'm not sure why I let him grab it from me. I keep crying about his future. My husband has been close to me, even though he doesn't know what I know about his sister. He thinks I'm only worried. I agree with the comment that I should get down and gently chat to everyone, but I'm not sure if everyone will believe me. Mom and Dad do have security. My husband has been hanging around close to me, even though he doesn't know what I know about his sister. He thinks I'm just worried, but I agree with the comment that I should get down and have a chat with everyone, although I'm not sure if they'll believe me. My parents have security cameras all around the house, given that this birthday party took place in their backyard. I'm sure they could check and confirm via their camera that Kayla gave me the plate. I'll speak with everyone tonight, then I'll update everyone. We then chatted, and I am very happy to have the nicest in. I'm sure the cameras in the backyard can prove that Kayla gave me the plate. I'll have a chat with everyone tonight and then we can update the others. I'm very happy to have the nicest people on earth here. Mill and Phil are already staying over with us, so I sat down with Harry and them over dinner to let them know I had something crucial to share. I began by taking a moment to think, feeling the weight of the circumstances on my shoulders. Everyone gathered around. I related the events of the birthday party, including how Sil had handed me a plate of prawns and Jamie had unintentionally. I had something crucial to share with Mill and Phil, so I sat down with them over dinner. I began by taking a moment to breathe, feeling the weight of the situation on my shoulders. Everyone gathered around. I told them about the birthday party, how Sil had handed me a plate of prawns and Jamie had eaten some of them by accident, which had made him sick. Their shock and incredulity showed how I was feeling as I spoke. Mill and Phil looked at each other, clearly worried. Harry's face changed from uncertainty to rage. I went on to express my concern about S's intentions and past attempts to hurt me, and the possible repercussions for myself and our unborn child. I hesitated to share this information, being the pragmatic woman Mill is. She advised me right away to look at the security camera footage, given the gravity of the matter. Phil nodded in agreement, though he looked upset. Harry stayed quiet to process the startling disclosure. So, we had a look at the security footage from the camera app, and it was pretty clear what happened. The video shows Ja presenting the poison plate, and then what happened to cause her suffering. The data was really detailed, and it was obvious what had happened. Harry was pretty angry about it all, and Mill and Phil were pretty shocked too. They didn't know why their daughter had done it, and it was pretty shocking for us as well. We tried to figure out why she would act like that, because it's a really serious issue. So, the law has decided to send this info to the police after what's happened at it's Jimia's job to go to the police and make a statement, so he'll be visiting and meeting him after he's better. I keep thinking about how I let Jimia have my poison dish, and I'm worried about how he'll react. I'm really nervous. I can't eat or sleep properly. I'll let you know if there's anything important. Update, I'm back with another update, and I know it's been a month since the last one. I'm a pregnant woman experiencing a lot. First things first, she was detained after seeing the proof. My in-laws handed the recording to the police. Kayla admitted everything right away and did not even dispute the claims. She started crying. Jimia was as startled as any of us when my husband approached him about what had happened. I told him he would always be part of our family, no matter what he decided to do. My husband advised him to press charges against his sister, since this was such a wicked thing to do. Once Jimia recovered, he not only chose to prosecute charges, but also sought a divorce. He begged them to pardon her, Kayla. I called Mill and Phil, as it happens. Kayla's pregnant too. She tried to control them by telling them they should do this for the benefit of their granddaughter, and begged them to bail her out. Phil strongly advised her, nevertheless, that she should at last learn to take responsibility for herself, and that they were done coddling her. Though Mill is quite depressed about what's happening to her daughter, she knows that her actions can't be simply forgiven. The cops discovered proof that she had tampered with the meal meant to damage me, which backfired and resulted in. She's been charged with several offenses, including risking life, causing damage and tampering with food, which has compromised its integrity. Kayla's been pleading with Jamie not to charge her, but he's set on punishing her. Her court hearing's going to begin soon, and I doubt she can flee this time. My son and I are doing okay. He's clueless about what his aunt has done, so we want our son to know and avoid these circumstances. I've talked about it, and we do plan to sit down with him and be honest. It'll be tough, but super important, to have a tough but vital conversation with a young child. My doctor also says I should get regular ultrasounds during my pregnancy, every 2 weeks. We want the kid to be a surprise, so we don't want to find out the baby's gender. My parents have been a bit protective of me, especially after what happened with Kayla. They're pushing me to get treatment because they're worried it could affect my mental health. I'm pregnant right now, so I agree with them. I've been acting normally, but I've got a deep phobia about what Kayla did to my meals. I avoid eating outside food or anything I haven't made myself. Hopefully my husband will help me overcome this irrational phobia, as he knows about it and supports me. I last checked 8 months ago, and Kayla is a prisoner right now. She was found guilty of the allegations, though I never went to her court hearings. Occasionally, the law told me how Kayla came clean to the court, admitting years of jealousy of me. She had always dreamed of one of her best friends marrying my husband, so when he started dating me, she would always try to harass me. Since she never wanted an outsider to marry her brother, she became jealous when we told my husband's birthday party that we were expecting, as she was also going to reveal her pregnancy. She wanted to share her wonderful news, since she had Kayla told the court about our relationship, admitting she'd been jealous of me for years. She'd always dreamed of one of her best friends marrying my husband, so when he started dating me, she tried to harass me. She was jealous when we told my husband's birthday party that we were expecting, as she was also going to reveal her pregnancy. She wanted to share her wonderful news, since she'd miscarried once and felt we'd stolen her opportunity to shine. She got really angry and mixed rat poison with my supper. She said she wanted me to wind up in the hospital, but she never wanted to physically hurt the baby or myself. She said she deserved a reduced punishment, as she never expected me to offer her husband my plate, and since I essentially poisoned her spouse. The judge agreed with her. She's going to be out of our lives for a while, at least. Jamie's also free at last, since he's effectively divorced her. We've seen him over the months and include him in family events whenever we can. He told me it was never my fault when we spoke, and I apologized to him for handing him my plate. I told him I had been rehearsing it over and over again, wishing I wish I could have done things differently to stop him from getting poisoned. I started crying and said that Jamie is doing well right now and that makes me happy. Also, our family now has a baby daughter. She has made our lives better even though we still have problems from the past. Our son Nate is very happy that he has a big brother and he has been loving and caring towards his little sister. Seeing our kids connect makes us appreciate things my parents and in-laws have done for us. I'm so happy that he's doing well right now. I started crying because James is doing well, which makes me happy. Regarding Harry and myself, our family now has a baby daughter. Our daughter has made our lives better, even though there are still shadows from the past. Our son Nate is very happy that he has a big brother, and he has been loving and caring towards his little sister. Seeing our kids connect makes us appreciate things. My parents and in-laws have been there for us all through guiding us through this new phase of our lives. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.